Hi there, it's Mapleleafman. I'd like to start this podcast by saying it's great to be back. I've had some support in the past on my old one, but this new one is just starting out, not quite taking off yet. Today, I'm going to talk about Ken's saw. It's a little story that someone asked me about a while ago about why I was volunteering at a Japanese seniors home. Ken and Grace lived across the street. And since we moved in about 36 years ago, they were constant, great neighbors. Grace was the sweetest, loveliest woman I think I've ever met in my life. And Ken helped me trim trees and gave me tips on how, what branches to cut, stuff like that. His English was basically non-existent, but we worked together on quite a few deals, me fixing his car and stuff like that. Grace's English was perfect, pretty perfect anyway, and I'd help her with her uh, Rogers cable, all that kind of stuff. The confusion. I saved them from getting ripped off on a furnace deal once. So out in front of my house, there's a large apple tree. It's been there since we moved in, and I don't know when it was planted. It's probably, I don't know, 60, 70 years old. Ken and Grace's window looked out on that tree, and it gave Ken a feeling of great peace and satisfaction when it was trimmed properly. So he'd come over and help me. And we trimmed a lot of it, and then the center part of the tree died. It looked ridiculous anyway. There's one huge trunk up the middle. So I decided one day to cut it down, cut the center part out. I've got a lot of saws. I've got harp saws, bow saws, all kinds of stuff like that. Basically one-handed saws. And Kent came over, and he was about 85, I guess. Then I think he was 91 when he died. Anyway, he came over and he climbed the tree, and he was up in the tree with me. He was that kind of a guy, slim, trim, and very old, but he was still active. So him and I were hacking away at this saw, and he kept telling me, "I have a big saw. I have a big saw." So I thought my saw was pretty big. It was, about a meter long, and it was a bow saw. I forget the real name for it, but anyway, it was hot, and I got frustrated and with my saw, and I said, "Okay, Ken, bring over your big saw." Don't you know, Ken shows up with, um, you've seen those pictures out in Western Canada, Western United States, where there's two guys standing beside this gigantic tree, and they're cutting it down with this very long saw with huge teeth and a handle on either end. It's a huge two-man saw. And I saw that and I said, "Oh my goodness, he really does have a big saw." And I'm embarrassed to say that that saw cut through that tree like a hot knife through butter. It was lickety scoot and it was done. So nothing came into my mind at that point. I said, "This is great," and I thanked him. And it wasn't until I started working at the Japanese seniors home where I volunteer that I realized where that saw probably came from, and it broke my heart. It must have come from Ken being in a work camp, probably on the West Coast. I'm not that close at all with her children. They're all grown up and as old as I am or older. Anyway, Grace came in the backyard one day and started to talk about what life would be like, later on when Ken passes. And she told me about this home, how nice it was. She always dreamed of retiring there. Well, unfortunately, she got breast cancer and didn't last very long at all. Ken went on for a number of years, and finally he passed away. So that's why I'm there. That's why I'm at the home, is because of Ken and Grace. I'm getting emotional now. I have to tell you, though, Grace made the absolute best potato salad you've ever had in your life, or I've ever had in my life. It was absolutely incredible. It was nothing like I'd ever had before. And she gave us the recipe, told us how to do it. And someday when I'm in the mood for doing potato salad, I'll make Grace's recipe. Her real name was Midori, and I think I don't know 100% what Ken's name was, but he was a gardener, and their home, especially their backyard. Their backyard was very like a traditional Japanese garden. He had the water, he had the water wheel. He raked the sand and the stones into patterns. He had I don't know what they're called, the trees that he cut into the shape of animals and or birds, let's say. And it was heaven back there. It was peaceful. It was just, I'm sure it was because he'd been through a lot. They both had been through a lot in their lives, and this was a bit of peace for them. His front yard, final funny story for today. The whole front and backyards were on HGTV or some show like that. They'd made it. It was incredible to see, and the TV crew had been there and recorded them. And he won contests. We have these best house, best neighborhood garden contests. And someone stole a tree. Came in at night and stole a tree from his front yard. And he came running across one morning. He says, "Someone stole my tree. Someone stole my tree." And it wasn't funny, but it was well, it was sad. I mean, maybe $100 tree. I don't know how much it was worth, but it showed how much care he took in his gardening. That someone saw this tree and thought it was good enough to steal, beautiful enough to steal. His kids were having a wedding and they were hosting it at the house. So he dug up his whole front lawn and resodded it because the grass wasn't perfect. And he was that kind of a guy. And he'd trim your tree for free. And if you offered to pay him, as the lady down the street did, you'd never see him again. All right. That's my story of Ken and Grace and my neighbors. And that's why I'm volunteering at the home, the Senior Health Society. It's a wonderful place. So that's why I'm there. Thanks for listening to my ramble. And I hope to see you and hear you and be with you again.